Everybody, this is Jose with Oakland Latinos United, aka Oakland Latinos Unidos, on here with a new spill, a new video for you guys to enjoy. Well, today's video is another dedication to a person who's recently deceased, someone who I could say was a Bay Area legend in his own right, and basically he had tragically passed away this week, and we're gonna get into it. So we're talking today about a DJ who's well known in the Bay Area, who used to be on 94.9. Before that, it was 107.7. And his name was JV. Also known, his real name being Jeffrey Vanderdrift. So this started back in February when JV went missing, was reported missing. And sadly, he was found deceased in Pier 39 in San Francisco earlier this week. I think it was like Thursday, I believe. And yeah, they found his body. I think they found it floating in the water, and looks like it might have been a suicide. But why am I making a video about JV and who was JV? And we're going to talk about all that and why I'm dedicating this video to him and making this video, because he was someone I grew up with, listening to in the old days, and man, I had a lot of good laughs listening to him. So I'm going to give you a quick background of who he was and why he was popular. So let's take it back to the 90s. This is like 1995, 96, 97, 98. There was a very popular radio show on Wild. It was actually originally Wild 107.7. Then they changed it to 94.9 sometime in the late 90s. And that show was called The Doghouse. And The Doghouse was a morning show. It went on, from 7 in the morning till about like 10 or 11 in the morning. And it was basically like, you could say, a shock jock show. This is the era of the shock jocks. Those of you who are younger might not remember this era. But this is an era when there was a lot of DJs out there who would do edgy, crazy, humorous things. There were, and a lot of these things you couldn't get away with today with our cancel culture and our very, the way that it is today. People are so, they cry about any little thing. You know what I'm saying? Today's culture, you probably couldn't get away with half of the stuff they used to do back then. But there was a lot of shock jock shows at that time on the radios. There was Howard Stearns, there was Opie and Anthony, and there was various others out there who would do like crazy things, prank call people, do crazy stunts, and various other things. There was also another guy named Mancow Muller, who had originally been on 94.9, and I believe went on to be in Chicago later on in life. He was also like a shock jock. And Mancow Muller was the one that originally was doing the morning show on 107.7, and he got fired because he did a stunt where he cut his hair on the Bay Bridge, and he got fired after that. And that's when the Doghouse, I believe, started coming on 107.7, 94.9. And this was around like 95, 96. So the first time I had ever heard of the Doghouse, I didn't know much about him. And also, you got to remember, I had transitioned from Sacramento to the Bay because I had been living in Sacramento for a couple years between 92 till about early 95. I want to say I first heard about them in 96. And a friend of mine who lived out here in the Bay would always talk about them. He's like, the Doghouse, you gotta listen to them. They're hella funny. They're on in the morning. So by chance, around that time, I'm not much of a morning person, but around that time, I started working a job where I had to be up in the morning. And at the job, I would actually listen to my Walkman. Back then, we had Walkmans. And I would listen to my Walkman because it was like kind of like industrial. I worked like a little warehouse kind of thing, but you could wear your earphones and do your little job. And I would listen to them in the morning, and man, I became a fan instantly. I mean, these dudes were hella funny, and I've talked about them on my lives before. They did all kinds of crazy things. They used to prank call people. I remember they used to do stunts, like they would go out and mess with people. I remember they would have women like do crazy things online, pie eating contests and all kinds of crazy things that they would do. They were off the hook. They would prank call celebrities You know what I mean? I can remember they prank called Fred Savage. They prank called Bobcat Goldthwait and several other people. I remember they would call people acting like they were actors. I remember one particular one, they were calling businesses acting like they were Harrison Ford, and people were falling for it. I remember another thing they used to do was they used to make girlfriends break up with their boyfriends online, and they used to call the boyfriends and break up online, and sometimes the boyfriends would start crying on air live. It was like, it's hella messed up. Like, these fools were off the hook. Like I said, this is humor from a different time. You know what I mean? It's not so emotional like today, and people get so offended like today. This is a different time, a different world. But this was the Bay Area morning show for almost like from 95 till about 2005. You know, and then those of you who remember, they used to have Hammer and Hank. He was a guy who had autism. Remember Hammer and Hank? They used to make him prank call people, and they used to make him mess with people. I used to always see Hammer and Hank on the board all the time back in the days. You know what I mean? And they had a whole host of other people. They have Elvis. Elvis was the co-host. That was Big Joe Lopez. He was one of the dudes that would do a lot of the crazy stunts. That was Hollywood. He was one of the other DJs, and that was JV right there at the end. You know, and they had Hammer and Hank. I think they had a DJ named Greg Lopez. They had a couple of females on there. And, yeah, it was a funny show, man. It was really funny. I remember at the time, I was a fan for probably all the way to the end when they stopped playing them in 2005. I had heard that they had moved to New York and did the Doghouse, just Elvis and JV for a while. Then they came back to the Bay Area. I remember when they came back to the Bay, they were on an AM station for a couple of years, and I used to listen to them for a while. And that must have been like 2015, 16. And then that radio station changed, so I didn't hear from them in a long time. Apparently, they were still doing some things on 94.9 JV was, and on different radio stations. But yeah, man, the Doghouse, like I said, they were Bay Area legends in their own right. You know, those of you who remember that era, that time, you know, that used to listen to them know exactly what I'm talking about. All the funny things they used to do, prank calls and breakups on the phone, and all kinds of crazy stuff that they did. They used to also have a couple of video shows. I remember you could buy them on VHS. I think one was called Radio Kings, and they had a couple others. You know what I mean? They were hella funny, you know, and yeah, but I think there was another guy named Strawberry, too, that used to be on the Doghouse, too, if I remember right. But yeah, man, those were good memories. I remember they used to always be at the Sound Factory and at a lot of the popular clubs in San Francisco at the time. But yeah, man, the end of an era, like I said, JV was found dead recently. He had went missing for almost like 2-3 weeks. And according to what I read, he was suffering from something called Lyme's disease. I'm not exactly sure what that is. And he said, apparently what I read is that he kept saying that he couldn't cope with it. It was like hard to have this disease. And it looks like possibly he took his own life. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but that's the way it's looking. The police said it didn't look like foul play. So, you know, my respects, my condolences to the family of JV, his wife, and, you know, I'm one of those guys who grew up on him, and, yeah, I'll never forget the Doghouse. Even thinking about it makes me chuckle and laugh, but, yeah, back in the days, the Doghouse really entertained me when I was a youngster, man, and, you know, that was part of my growing up in the Bay Area. It was kind of like my welcome back to the Bay Area from Sacramento when I stayed in Sacramento for a couple of years, you know what I mean? Yeah, those are the memories I always have. The years I came back to the Bay, listening to the Doghouse, you know what I mean? And just having some good-ass laughs. I never got to meet them, unfortunately. They were the only ones I never got to meet. You know, I met a lot of people, but I never got to meet them. But yeah, man, it was the end of an era. You know, it's the end of an era. It was a cool era at the time, you know. And, yeah, I'll never forget JV, the Doghouse, you know. My respects, R.I.P. to JV, and, yeah, man, condolences to the family, and like I said, he's a Bay Area legend in his own right. On the radio, those of you who remember the Doghouse, you know what I'm talking about. Leave it in the comments, your memories of the Doghouse, and what you think about JV and all that situation. And, yeah, man, that's about it. This is Jose with Oakland Latinos United. Till the next one. Late.